Welcome back, I'm Captain Xavier, and as promised, here is my self-pumping Nerf Titan. This is the primary for my ultimate Nerf rocket launcher loadout that I recently featured, which is a loadout I have been wanting to run for years. That's why I've been acquiring so many Titan rockets, was so that I could run an all-Titan rocket loadout. But I needed a functional primary, and a standard Titan just isn't really functional, and so I really needed something that was either an HPA system that could fire Titan rockets or a self-pumping LPA system that could fire Titan rockets, similar to what's in both Ire and Tyr. Ire has a Titan tank that can be automatically pumped using, I think, a blood pressure cuff pump, and Tyr has an automatic car tire pump that's in it, which fills an XBZ rather than a Titan. And so I kind of knew how to do it, but the things hadn't all come together, and then they finally did. Luchathor had built a self-pumping Centurion that is a full breach Mega XL launcher, and he did it using an automatic car tire pump, particularly this one, which allows you to actually set the PSI. You can change what the PSI is, and then when you turn it on, it will pump up to that PSI and then turn itself off. And then if you push the button again, it will fill the thing back up to that original PSI, which is really cool. And so that's what I tried to do originally. I actually tried to graft this thing in with its computer on board, so I'd have dynamic HPA. The actual integration went beautifully. It looks lovely. It was going to work great, but I had to extend some of the wires to get things to fit properly, and somehow in that wire extending process, I managed to fry the board, and it just quit working. So instead, I went to having it manually activated. I grafted in a switch behind this trigger. You pull that switch, and it would turn on the pump. And that worked. That got it functional. That was better than nothing. But I wasn't happy with it because it wouldn't pump to the same PSI every time. And that was the problem with an original Titan, just a stock Titan, is you can pump it up manually, but the gauge doesn't actually tell you what the PSI is. It just kind of tells you that it's kind of full. And so there was no way to know if you had the same amount of air, if you were a little short or a little hot. And it made it all but impossible to reliably gauge how far it's going to shoot or things like that. Titans aren't exactly the most accurate of things, but you could at least get a vague idea of how far it would shoot if you had something that would fill to the same PSI. And so I either would have needed to put on an actual pressure gauge that I could then watch as it filled up to, or what I ended up going with was a gizmo, which is a pressure activated switch or shut off switch. And I had it so that when it reaches a certain PSI, it automatically shuts off. And if it drops below that PSI, it automatically turns back on. And that's how this now works. There's an on-off switch that I have cleverly hidden right in here so it doesn't accidentally get pumped. You put that on, and now it will pump up until it gets to the PSI. It'll pump until it gets to the PSI that's been set. There's just a dial that you can turn to set what the PSI is, and for this gauge will go up to hundreds of PSI, and this is very low. But now that it is pumped up, I can fire it, and it automatically starts pumping. Load the next rocket, and fire again. And that makes it viable, and it takes longer right now because it's very, very cold here, so the air is thin. When I first built it a little while back, it was much warmer, and it took about 6 seconds to fill the tank, and that's about how long it takes you to pull a rocket out of one of the pouches and reload. This is a little bit faster because it's much closer, but it works very, very well. But still, there is that time while it's reloading that you would be helpless. So I mounted the Harrier on there. Now, if you're familiar with a Titan, you'll know it actually has 2 blasters that can be attached to it naturally, called the Unity Power System. You've got a single-shot pistol called the Scout that mounts here to the side using this reverse rail clip, and then by pushing this button, it pushes this, which hits a button on the top of the Scout, which will make it fire. And then it has a blaster called the Hornet, which is another air-powered blaster, multi-barreled. You can either fire each shot individually, or you can fire them all at once. And that would hook on here, and then this trigger would make that button come out and would fire the Hornet. And this little gasket thing here made it so that when you pumped up the Titan, it would also pump up the Hornet, which is a really cool thing, but it's neither of those blasters are particularly viable in today's age. There's almost no way to really reliably mod a Hornet, and the Scout is reverse plunger. It's very, very limited. So I decided to go with more powerful options. And there already existed a beautiful side-mounted blaster that fit perfectly, which is the Harrier, so I had it printed up in colors to match a Titan because I decided I wanted to keep it stock colors for reasons. It plugs in using this cable that can also be conveniently tucked into the sight up there, and it makes it so that this front trigger activates the Harrier. So that connection is way stronger than you'd think. I'm pretty sure the 3D printing would break before it actually popped loose. It is solid. You can pull the magazine out and put it in. I have absolutely no worry about that coming off of there, and it gives you that burst of 18 rounds. It still doesn't have motor braking, so you pretty much have to dump the whole mag or you're going to get a jam, but that is how it was designed, and it's really, really cool. You'll then notice that instead of a Hornet, I have this, which is a rocket post. Just extra rocket storage. I cut the top off of the Hornet and glued and screwed this in after just 3D designing it. And now I have a convenient place to store an extra rocket that's really quick and easy to reload. So, one thing I wish I'd done, I wish I'd drilled a hole in it so that it wouldn't vacuum seal like that, but maybe on a second iteration. So that's pretty much it. I ended up using just the pump itself, which looks like this. It's entirely self-contained. It's just a 12-volt motor, so it runs on a 2S LiPo. The pump is mounted right about here. The LiPo is mounted here. I've got a battery door there on the back. That's how you get it. There's the little thumb screw. There's the 2S or the 3S LiPo that's running the whole thing. The gauge on the side now doesn't do anything. It's purely decoration because instead of going to this, it goes to that pump or that pressure switch. One thing I do want to add is I do eventually intend to add a second set of thread on here. So you can Dremel this out and put in, I think it's 1/2-inch thread or 3/4 inch, quarter-inch thread, I don't know. The thread that all of Eyre's attachments use, so that I could use the dual demolisher rocket launcher or the absolver rockets or whatever, be able to use any of Eyre's attachments with this as well. So that is something I will do in the future the next time I go to a hardware store and buy parts. So yeah, there is my self-pumping Titan. If you have any questions, by all means ask down in the comments. If you would like to see some footage of it, I will eventually run this loadout in events. It's just cold and wet right now, so there aren't many events for me to go to. But if you want to see some firing footage of it right now, hop on over to the World Foam Alliance YouTube channel and check out the latest episode of The Range, Season 1, Episode 1. I fire this there. If you're looking for more firing footage from me, The Range is now exclusive to the World Foam Alliance. That's my contribution to them. I will now be doing The Range over there. So check them out, subscribe. That's where Get Off My Lawn is with me and Al the Geek. They've got a couple of other exclusive shows for YouTubers there. There's the Foam Zone, which is like a talk show kind of thing. Sophie Lightning's doing a show there. Al the Geek is doing The Forge, where he talks about how to modify and paint blasters. There's a lot of good stuff. We're hoping to get them up to 1,000 subscribers by the end of January so we can monetize and really start getting the ball rolling on the World Foam Alliance so we can actually start doing things like hosting events and sponsoring teams and doing all kinds of stuff. So hop over to the World Foam Alliance, subscribe, check out The Range where you can see me fire this a whole bunch. And thank you guys for watching.